The House Oversight Committee was in full session, cameras broadcasting live across major networks, social media streams lighting up with every minute. Seated confidently at the witness table was Kash Patel, former Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense, known for his precise legal mind and unshakable demeanor. He had come prepared, a thick binder in front of him filled with declassified documents, timelines, and footnotes backing every one of his assertions. The room buzzed as Patel laid out his statement, his voice calm but firm. He dissected key intelligence decisions made over the last decade and highlighted instances where politics had allegedly compromised national security. The committee members listened, some with interest, others with thinly veiled hostility. One such figure was Representative Jerrold Nadler, whose disdain had been building quietly as Patel's testimony began to stir headlines online. As Patel spoke, a smirk began to curl across Nadler's face. He leaned toward the mic, intending to interrupt, but the chairman motioned for him to wait. That only fueled his irritation. By the time it was his turn to speak, Nadler's posture had shifted, no longer inquisitive, but adversarial. He gripped the microphone and stared across the chamber at Patel, as if sizing up an enemy rather than addressing a fellow American. "Well, Mr. Patel," Nadler began, his tone laced with sarcasm, "you seem to have quite the opinion on American governance, but tell me this. If you hate it so much, why don't you go back to Uganda?" The words hung in the air like an accidental gunshot, loud, shocking, and impossible to take back. A few people in the room gasped audibly. A staffer at the far end of the gallery dropped her pen. One congresswoman visibly winced. Even the stenographer looked up in disbelief. The room froze, as if someone had just breached every known code of decorum and decency. Kash Patel didn't move at first. He remained seated, hands folded in front of him, eyes locked onto Nadler. There was no outward reaction, no raised voice, no fluster, but there was a shift in energy, like the tightening of a storm. He slowly removed his earpiece, then leaned into the mic with practiced control. "Representative Nadler," Patel said evenly, "I was born in Garden City, New York. My parents immigrated legally from India, not Uganda, and they did so to give their children the kind of opportunity this country uniquely offers. They worked double shifts in small business jobs so their son could grow up to become a public servant, a federal prosecutor, and a senior official who's briefed 2 presidents. The room remained locked in silence, all ears tuned in. "I have served this country in war zones. I've worked in counterterrorism. I've been in rooms that you, with all due respect, will never be invited into because those rooms require clarity, integrity, and constitutional loyalty. Your comment wasn't just wrong geographically, it was morally bankrupt." A few people in the gallery gave quiet nods. Several phones in the press area buzzed at once, reporters frantically typing as Patel's response became a headline in real time. Patel went on, "I'm not offended because I've been called worse by better people. I'm responding because people watching this, young Americans of all backgrounds, need to know that if you work hard, if you follow the law, and if you stay committed to truth, no amount of ignorance, not even from a congressman, can erase who you are." The impact was instant. Even committee members known to oppose Patel shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nadler, for the first time, looked uncertain. His hands fiddled with his glasses, the arrogance evaporating slowly from his face. "You asked why I don't go," First Patel concluded. "The answer is simple. I never left. My America includes my family, my service, and my Constitution. Maybe it's time you remind yourself what those words mean." With that, Patel placed the earpiece back on the table, stood up, and gathered his papers. He nodded respectfully to the chairman and exited the room, not in defeat, but in a quiet triumph. The camera followed his every step as the door closed behind him. Within minutes, clips of the exchange flooded social media. Hashtags like Jocker Go Backware and Kash Patel trended at lightning speed. People from across the political spectrum weighed, and Nadler's office was soon inundated with calls, many demanding an apology, some calling for censure. But no one could deny it. Patel's response hadn't just silenced a congressman. It had reminded America of something deeper, that patriotism isn't determined by your name, your face, or where your ancestors came from. It's defined by your principles, your voice, and how you use them when it matters most. By the time Kash Patel's boots had left the marble floor of the hearing chamber, his phone was already lighting up. Friends, former colleagues, and complete strangers flooded his inbox with messages of support. News outlets ran the clip on a loop. Even networks that typically ignored Patel's commentary couldn't resist the story. A sitting congressman had hurled a racially charged insult during a nationally televised hearing, and Kash's calm, factual, and devastating rebuttal had turned the narrative upside down. Meanwhile, inside the Capitol, Nadler remained seated, the expression on his face twisted between confusion and regret. He hadn't expected Patel to push back so precisely, so powerfully. A few aides leaned in, whispering urgent advice, their phones buzzing with alerts. One staffer showed him a screen. Patel's quote about never having left America had already racked up 1 million views on X. Another aide tried to issue a press statement, but it was too late. The story had taken on a life of its own. Hours later, Patel was invited onto several primetime shows. He accepted only one, an evening slot with a centrist anchor known for giving guests room to speak. Dressed in a navy blazer, no tie, Patel appeared composed as ever. "Mr. Patel," the anchor said, "millions of Americans saw what happened today. Your response has been described as surgical, measured, and historic. What went through your mind when Congressman Nadler made that comment?" Kash leaned back slightly. "Honestly, I wasn't shocked. I've seen too much in my career to be surprised by ignorance masquerading as authority. But I also knew this was a chance to say something that would outlast the insult. It wasn't about me. It was about what we show the next generation, especially kids who look like me, that when you're confronted by bigotry, you don't shout back. You stand taller." The audience applauded, rare for a news show, but the moment resonated. Across the country, young immigrants, veterans, and ordinary citizens posted videos thanking Patel. Several veterans from South Asia shared their own stories of being asked where they were really from, despite wearing the American uniform. A retired Marine posted a photo of his deployment badge next to Patel's quote, captioning it, "We didn't go overseas to defend ignorance at home." By the next morning, Nadler's office released a carefully worded statement claiming he misspoke and meant to refer to Patel's un-American rhetoric, not his race or origin. But the excuse landed poorly. Major editorial boards called the statement a weak deflection. Civil rights groups condemned the comment outright. A coalition of House members, both Republican and Democrat, signed a letter demanding a formal apology on the House floor. Pressure mounted. Nadler, under fire from colleagues, donors, and constituents, finally relented and addressed the chamber the next day. "I want to clarify a comment I made yesterday to Mr. Patel," Nadler said, staring down at his prepared notes. "It was inappropriate, and I regret the words I used. While I strongly disagree with his policy positions, my remarks should never have veered into the personal or the racial. I apologize to Mr. Patel, his family, and to anyone who felt hurt by my statement." But by then, the tide had already turned. Patel's name was now synonymous with resilience and dignity. Universities invited him to speak. A book publisher offered a deal for him to share his experiences. Even members of Congress who had never engaged with him before reached out privately to thank him for reminding the country what patriotism truly looks like. Still, Kash remained grounded. He returned to his work behind the scenes, continuing to advise on national security issues. In a podcast interview weeks later, he was asked what he hoped people remembered from the incident. "I don't want to be remembered for being insulted," he said. "I want to be remembered for how I responded. That's what character is. It's not about how loud you are. It's about what you stand for when someone tries to knock you down." In a divided America, where voices often clash louder than they connect, Patel's moment on the Hill had done more than just rebuke a powerful congressman. It had sparked a national conversation, not just about race or immigration or politics, but about what it truly means to belong. And sometimes the most American thing you can do is simply remind people that you never left. You've been here all along, working, serving, and waiting for the country to remember itself.